The story begins with a young woman named Frida, who dreams of becoming a nail artist specializing in animal-themed designs. For now, she works as a waitress. She frequently posts photos of her nail creations on social media. One day, Frida watches an interview with a famous man named Slater King. Slater is a billionaire involved in technology. In the interview, he apologizes for something, though he does not specify his mistake. He also announces that he will step down from his position as CEO at his company. He mentions having purchased an island where he grows his own food and keeps chickens. It turns out Frida secretly admires Slater. She starts looking up extensive information about him online. She feels bored with her repetitive life and desperately needs a vacation. She mutters to herself that she wishes she could find a new opportunity, or at least take a break.
I need a fucking vacation.
1, 2, get down!
A few days later, Frida and her roommate Jess are working as waitresses at Slater's annual party. Frida's boss reprimands her because, at last year's event, Frida tried talking to Slater. Frida apologizes and explains she was simply complimenting his manicured nails. However, her boss insists that this time she should not stand out. While on duty, Frida and Jess notice how luxurious the party is. Many wealthy guests are there, wearing their finest attire. Frida occasionally glances over at Slater. Jess then leads Frida to a dressing room where they manage to find 2 formal dresses to wear. Afterward, they stroll around the venue, attempting to blend in with the important guests. Frida spots Slater from afar and tries to move closer, but she accidentally bumps into another waiter and tumbles to the floor. Slater appears at that moment and helps her up. They introduce themselves, and Slater then presents Frida to his circle of friends. He begins with Dr. Rich, his therapist. Frida jokes that Dr. Rich could blink twice if he's in trouble, and they share a laugh. Slater then introduces her to the others, including Cody, Stan, Vic, Heather, Camilla, Lucas, Tom, and Sarah. The evening is full of laughter and drinks, and Frida feels excited to be mingling with well-known personalities. Suddenly, Slater's assistant Stacy arrives and mentions that they must leave for Slater Island. Slater bids Frida goodbye somewhat reluctantly. However, while Frida is talking to Jess about the experience, Slater returns and invites them both to join him on the island, and they agree. In the following scene, everyone except Dr. Rich boards a private jet bound for the island. Upon arrival, Frida is in awe of how lavish the place is. Stacy, Slater's assistant, asks everyone to hand over their phones so their vacation can remain free from work distractions. Everyone agrees, though Jess is slightly hesitant. After that, Slater escorts Frida to her room, which is filled with luxurious outfits for her to wear. Once Slater leaves, Frida takes a bath and applies a lovely perfume she finds in the room. But before she has a chance to change, an elderly housekeeper suddenly appears and calls her Red Rabbit. Frida feels confused and asks what the words mean, but the housekeeper departs without responding. Frida then meets up with Jess again, and Jess remarks how surprising it is that they have been provided with such nice clothing despite the last-minute invitation. Frida assumes it must be one of the perks of being wealthy. They next join the other girls by the pool. While there, Frida often exchanges glances with Slater. Sarah, one of the guests, tries to approach him and charm him, but Slater remains focused on Frida and seems disinterested in Sarah. Afterwards, Slater takes Frida on a tour of the island, showing her a rare flower called Aria, which he says people here used to capture more of the same blooms. He also informs Frida that the island is home to numerous venomous snakes, and that the staff has been attempting to remove them. Slater then reveals that he can barely recall anything from a 10-year segment of his childhood, which is why he frequently consults with Dr. Rich, a specialist in dealing with lost memories. Frida finds this a bit odd, but Slater explains that forgetting certain things can sometimes be beneficial. As they continue their tour, they also cross paths with Stacy, who is carrying several red gift bags. That evening, everyone gathers in a dining area illuminated by candles because the island's generator has malfunctioned. During dinner, Frida accidentally spills something on her dress. Then Vic, who is Slater's right-hand man, asks Frida about her work. Frida replies that she is still trying to figure out how to describe her life story. At that moment, she also notices that Vic is missing his pinky finger. Slater jokes about how Vic might have lost it, but Vic chooses not to explain. Instead, he takes out a small bottle containing an unusual supplement. After everyone partakes in it, they become extremely upbeat and share laughter together. However, when Frida went to bed that night, she noticed that the stain on her dress had suddenly vanished. She thought it was strange but did not dwell on it. Over the next few days on the island, Frida and her friends continued to drink champagne almost non-stop, lounging by the pool during the day and enjoying lavish dinners in the evenings. They frequently consumed recreational substances as well. One afternoon, Slater noticed a scar near Frida's eye and asked how she got it, but Frida had no idea where it came from. He also inquired about her nail designs. Frida explained that she had a small brand named a nail mall, taken from the words animal and nails. Slater seemed satisfied with her answer. Suddenly, he excused himself in a hurry and even forgot to take his vapor device with him. When Frida picked it up, she saw dirt under its mouthpiece and was startled by the discovery. The following morning, Frida attempted to return the vapor device and saw Slater finishing a therapy session with Dr. Rich. She greeted Dr. Rich, reminding him of their introduction at the party and the joke about blinking twice. However, he appeared nervous and quickly left with his red gift bag. One night, everyone was dancing and having fun when a sudden scream rang out. It turned out that Jess had been bitten by a snake. Slater immediately subdued the snake with a bottle, assuring Jess that the venom was not lethal. Even so, Jess panicked for no apparent reason and left the gathering. When Frida approached, Jess said she wanted her phone back and intended to leave the island. Jess felt something was off about the place and the people there, but Frida refused to go. She believed it was her first real experience of living life fully, and viewed this getaway as the vacation they had always dreamed of. Eventually, Jess agreed to stay, although later that night, when she was alone, she suddenly had a nosebleed. The next day, Frida began her morning by bathing and applying the same perfume as before. While wandering the corridors, she saw a red bag lying on the floor outside her room. Curious, she stepped inside and discovered numerous red bags scattered about. At that moment, the elderly housekeeper appeared again and called her Red Rabbit. The housekeeper offered her a mysterious green liquid, and Frida drank it without hesitation. However, the woman then revealed a pile of snake remains, explaining that the liquid was actually venom collected from the venomous snakes they had caught on the island. Alarmed, Frida quickly fled the room. Soon afterward, she experienced a bizarre dream in which she saw her friend Jess holding a knife and asking Frida to hide it. When Frida woke up, she felt unwell. Sarah, one of the other guests, noticed Frida looked different, and not long afterward, Lucas appeared with a bruise on his eye. Nobody seemed too concerned about his injury, and Frida also realized Jess was nowhere to be found, making her feel anxious. After breakfast, the men planned to go fishing while the women decided to stay behind. At one point, one of the women accidentally pulled out a lighter inscribed with Jess's name, prompting Frida to ask about Jess. Strangely, none of them remembered her. "Who is Jess?" they asked. Frida grew more uneasy. She headed to the room where Jess had been staying, only to discover that the furniture and bedding appeared untouched. Frida then returned to her own room and found a knife hidden behind the mirror. Shortly afterward, Sarah showed up holding the lighter engraved with Jess's name. Frida insisted that Jess had definitely been on the island, but Sarah refused to believe her, stating she would surely remember if there had been anyone else around. Frida began sharing all the odd things she had been experiencing, showing Sarah a bruise on her arm she couldn't explain. Confused, Sarah admitted that of all the people there, she only truly knew Cody, who had invited her to the island. Frida and Sarah realized they were being manipulated by the men. Frida recalled Slater's remark that forgetting could be a gift. Together, they went to the room containing the red bags and theorized that the perfume they had been using might contain something that made them forget. Frida added that after drinking the snake venom, she had started remembering things. She found more of the venom in her room and gave a small amount to Sarah to try. They decided to mix the venom with tequila and offer it to Heather and Camilla, hoping it would restore their memories as well. Stacy then joined them and took a drink, mentioning that the men would return soon. Hearing this, Frida resolved to search for a phone in Slater's private villa, asking Sarah to shout if the men arrived. After a few moments, Sarah developed a nosebleed, just like Jess had before. When the men arrived, Slater asked where Frida was. Sarah answered that Frida was freshening up in her room. Meanwhile, Frida made her way into Slater's private villa and found the phone she had been looking for. However, the moment she heard Sarah screaming, she quickly hid the phone. Frida then noticed a series of Polaroid photos of various people holding red bags. Slater entered the room to retrieve his vapor device, unaware that Frida was hiding beneath the table. Suddenly, the snake venom began to take effect in Frida's body, causing a nosebleed and triggering memories of herself and other women being mistreated by the men. Frida realized the venom was what had helped Jess remember everything, and that Slater himself had ended Jess's life. Shocked by these revelations, Frida fled. She found Sarah and told her what had happened to Jess, fearing the same fate awaited them if they were not careful. They agreed to act as though everything was normal until Heather and Camilla recovered their own memories. That night at dinner, Frida's recollections intensified. She became aware that the men had been attacking them every night and using a special perfume to make them forget the terrible incidents. Frida also remembered that Dr. Rich had harmed her and feared he would be worried about her regaining those memories. Slater had assured Dr. Rich that the worse the events became, the more the women would forget them. That evening, Frida and Sarah pretended all was well by joining everyone on the dance floor. The atmosphere quickly shifted when an abrupt scream rang out. Camilla had remembered everything and, in a rage, went after Tom, injuring him severely. Slater tried to subdue her, while Heather chased after Vic. At the same moment, Sarah confronted Cody, who managed to flee. Heather managed to strike Vic forcefully, but Stan, the security guard, intervened and fired at Heather, ending her life. When the guard spotted Frida from a distance, he started pursuing her. Frida ran into the forest, but he eventually caught up and aimed his weapon at her. Fortunately, Sarah appeared behind him with a large rock and prevented him from harming Frida. At the same time, Slater dragged an extremely injured Vic and a bound Camilla toward his private villa. Lucas, still under the perfume's influence, was confused and had no understanding of what was happening. Slater ignored Lucas and pressed his foot down on Camilla's neck until she took her last breath. Elsewhere, Frida was searching for a knife in her room when Stacy arrived, visibly distraught. Frida realized that Stacy's memory had returned, though unlike the others, Stacy preferred to remain under the perfume's influence so she could forget the painful events. Viewing forgetfulness as a gift, Stacy was furious at Frida for forcing her to recall such troubling moments. The two argued, and Frida ultimately defended herself by thrusting a knife into Stacy's chest. Meanwhile, deep in the forest, Cody searched for the women on Slater's orders. However, Sarah appeared and confronted him. In her panic, she ended up firing at Cody. Lucas remained in a daze, unable to fathom why the women were acting in such a manner. A short while later, Sarah reunited with Frida, who had discovered a Polaroid of herself in the mansion. To Frida's surprise, the photo was dated a year ago. She realized she had been on the island before but had no recollection of it. Disturbed by this revelation, Frida and Sarah armed themselves with knives and a firearm, determined to put an end to the torment inflicted upon them. They made their way to Slater's villa and demanded he open the door. Slater refused, but a bewildered Lucas decided to unlock it. The instant the door opened, Sarah fired her weapon, causing Lucas to collapse. Slater used the momentary chaos to overpower Frida and lock the door. Though she struggled to resist, ultimately Slater managed to subdue her. At this point, Frida clearly recalled what happened the year before. She had tried to escape and stumbled, hitting her head on a rock. That fall had caused the injury near her eye. She also remembered that she was the one who had bitten off Vic's pinky finger. In the present, Slater told Frida that the world would be a better place if people could forget all their trauma and pain. He tried to coax her into joining him by using the perfume so she could erase every bad memory. While Slater continued speaking, Frida quietly freed herself using a shard of glass. Outside, Sarah attempted to shoot the locked door open but ran out of bullets. Slater chased after Sarah and dragged her into another room, only to find that Frida had already broken loose and was holding a knife. Slater confidently seized the knife from Frida. Initially, Frida feared he would harm her, but he insisted he would never do that because she was his closest friend. Slater then picked up his vapor device, preparing to act against Sarah. Suddenly, he became disoriented, forgetting what he was doing. Unbeknownst to him, Frida had slipped some of the perfume into the vapor device before he entered the room. The chemical made Slater disoriented, and several candles toppled onto the floor, igniting a massive blaze. Frida left Slater and Vic behind in the burning villa. Once outside, Sarah looked at Frida anxiously, hoping Frida knew what she was doing. The scene then revealed that Frida had actually saved Slater from the flames. In the final moments, some time had passed, and Slater's company was hosting another grand event. Slater appeared disoriented, struggling to remember key details. Dr. Rich, who had once been deeply involved, approached Slater and tried to speak with him. However, Frida, now married to Slater, appeared and informed Dr. Rich that Slater was unavailable. The doctor seemed visibly uneasy upon seeing Frida, especially when she told him that she remembered everything he had done. The film concluded with Frida being introduced as the new CEO of the company. It became clear that she had adjusted Slater's vapor device to keep him forgetful and compliant under her influence, thus bringing the story to a close.
But see bad mother.
If you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, because by subscribing you have supported me to make better videos. See you in the next video.